Good morning, everyone. Today's Thursday, September 29th, 2022, and we're here for a work session. As always, we're going to start with the Pledge of Allegiance. And Bob, can you please take the lead?
Sure. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which stands one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Bob. A couple of, one discussion item. We have an announcement and two discussion items today. First, even though I can't believe it's almost October, this weekend, beginning on Saturday, October 1st, we were hoping to hold our second annual Oktoberfest in Grangeville Park, coinciding with Art in the Park. However, unfortunately, the weather does not look good, and if it is rescheduled, please check downtownriverhead.org for an update on details and information this weekend. All right, so moving on forward for our first discussion for today, which is H2M, prospective planning applicant to complete our comprehensive plan. Jeff, I know you want to introduce this topic for us, and please introduce the presenters before us.
Good morning, everybody. This is a continuation of the review of two prospective consulting teams. We had three, we've narrowed it down to two, to H2M and BFJ. First up is H2M with Pat Del-Cole, Patricia. And one thing we've asked, we heard their firm's qualifications at the last work session on this topic, and so we asked that they focus predominantly on a very brief presentation on their proposals going forward.
Excuse me. Okay, so
Okay,
let's
well, good
start.
morning. Good morning.
Good
Thank
morning.
you so much for inviting us back before you to discuss the comprehensive plan update. Just very quickly, the last time we were here, we spoke about specifically the traffic section of the plan, and we indicated to you that, Jeff indicated that you were very happy with the work that McLean had done. We reached out to McLean. I actually spoke with them probably 3 or 4 times. They are not able to enter into agreement with us at this time to handle the traffic portion. So we have brought Greenman Peterson on our team. Dan Dresch is here today from Greenman Peterson. They also have spoken with McLean several times, and we are very confident that any information we need from McLean, any insights we need from them, they will be more than happy to provide for us should we be selected for this process. So I wanted to clarify that. Next I'm going to ask Zan if she will run through the proposal briefly. This proposal really reflects
Excuse me, we're getting a little feedback, Larry.
He's in the men's room.
Oh, that's why we're getting feedback, sorry.
That's okay. You want me to continue?
As a result of him being.
Please.
This proposal reflects our understanding of the scope based on the master plan RFP that was issued by the town several years ago. There are some gaps in information. We've made assumptions as to what information may or may not be available. Really, our best effort was to assume that the information that was on the website was the only information that was available, so we have done that. To the extent that there is additional information available that we're not privy to, of course, we can revisit the proposal for you. San, would you please run through some of the elements of the plan?
Certainly. Good morning and thank you for letting us come back and explain. So the last time when we came here to present a quals package, we asked questions, and we heard that there was a need for additional community engagement that was not done by the prior consultant. So we included that, but I would like to point you all to the community engagement section I call it my a la carte menu of community engagement. We tried to have a conservative approach and all-encompassing approach to see what all we thought would be necessary, and we identified each one individually. Things that we don't necessarily need to do, we won't include that. So should you choose to have us on this on your team, we'll be happy to talk to you about that. One of the things that I've put in here and I'm recommending is a visioning session. We would like to meet with the town board and whoever you want to include to basically get your input so that it's a very seamless transition for us from the prior consultants. So that's phase one, which is the community engagement one. I'm not going to go into the details of the meetings because, the main point I wanted to hit was about the community engagement, additional community engagement. So it's our understanding based on the master plan website and then the link, Dropbox link, that there is a lot of, this plethora of information of all the background work that has been done. The only element that is somewhat in a writing, has been written in a draft format is basically the natural resources and scenic resources. There is no, as far as I can tell, there are no recommendations or no streamlining of that. So that's number one. Number two, there has been some background studies of the prior planning work that we noticed, which we can incorporate. And also there's been a thorough market analysis and housing analysis, which is again a background study that we can incorporate. So we at H2M reviewed all the documents that were provided to us thoroughly and came up with this. So we would do a baseline analysis, a field visit is necessary, demographic analysis and trend reviews are necessary because we will use whatever documents that have been provided, but it's not complete, so we will include some of our own, studies. And then based on that, we'll start developing the comprehensive plan. And as I mentioned on page 9, that, these elements won't be prepared in a silo. They're all intrinsics. For example, land use and transportation are two discrete elements, but they are linked together as land uses generate parking demands and traffic impacts, and on the other hand, location of land uses in relationship with one another influence how transportation is used, and then in the same token, the economic development and land use strategies are interlinked. And one other thing I want to also point out that there was a master plan that was prepared in 2003, 20 years ago. So we'll review that. So we'll take all of those documents into consideration. One of the things I wanted to also mention to you is that we haven't been provided with goals and objectives that was agreed upon. What we noticed was everything from the 2003 plan. So that's the reason why we made an assumption that we'll need to review and interact with whomever we need to develop the goals and objectives. Regarding the land use plan element, there has been nothing provided as far as we know. So if we made an assumption that we need to have from scratch build up a land use plan element. Based on our conversations with the town board, we understand that TDR is a major concern, and so is farmland preservation, economic development. So we took all that into consideration and put forth the hours it would take, as well as the cost to do that.
San, if I can just jump in for one
Sure,
moment. One of
sure.
the things that San just mentioned with respect to the fee proposal, what we did was we laid out very clearly every task that we intend to undertake. We laid out what the deliverable was for each task, so you know exactly what you can expect. And we also gave hours to every task, so that it gives you a basis for how we came up with the fee, how much time
And
we
where
think.
is that?
That's in the back of the proposal, and it's on page
we have a proposal?
26 and 27.
Yes.
I don't,
26 and 27.
Yes.
Did everybody get one of those? I didn't get that.
It was emailed to you
Oh.
several weeks ago.
Where is the proposal? Would you like my copy?
I have,
I don't
yeah,
have-
we'll share.
I don't think we
So-
have that.
I don't
Yeah,
have
why don't you take my
26.
copy?
Yeah, I think we're,
I don't have
it's not in
26 and
here.
27.
Definitely not in here. So we need to put this up. We have to make it available to the media if we're discussing this.
This is what was forwarded to you?
Yeah, it
Yes.
was,
It's in the email.
Is it-
Okay, it's in the email, but it wasn't presented here, so where's Devin? Dawn, can you give this to Devin and have her make copies? How many copies? A copy for the board and there's two press individuals here?
Yeah, I
And
didn't
then
see
it has to
this.
go online. So you can continue until we can get
Okay.
copies.
So through the body of the proposal, we laid out every task, what the deliverable is. And in the itemized cost estimate, we listed every one of those tasks that we laid out, and we gave you an estimate on the number of hours that we expected to take us. To the extent it would take less, to the extent that there are documents available that wouldn't require us to put this amount of time in, we would be able to reflect that in a final fee.
So just, because when I looked over your proposal, it seems that you are much more extensive and more in-depth than the other proposal, and I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, that you're kind of relying less on the work that was already done. You're kind of reviewing things more.
So we're relying on the work that is on the comp plan website. As San indicated, for the land use plan, for example, we didn't see any documentation on that. So our assumption is that we're going to begin at the beginning on that and work through, that section independent of any outside input.
Dawn, do we have any material on land use? I'm sure we have. Some studies,
on which part?
land use. How about Jeff? Do we have anything on land use?
Everything that the AKF had done is on the
That's
website.
AKF, outside of AKF. I'm sure we have some studies on land
All
use.
this stuff is available on the town website, all the prior land use studies and the 2003 comprehensive plan, they're all on the town website.
And that's what we looked at. So I just want to make it very clear when I said that from scratch, based on what's, valid in 2022. We have reviewed all your background studies. AKRF did a summary of everything. We're going to use that as well. But we still need to have a land use, land use issues, zoning concerns. We need to address that in the master plan. We need to discuss farmland preservation. We need to discuss TDR. We need to discuss potential rezoning. That's what I'm trying to mention. That's what I was trying to express when I said that.
So,
And that's what we haven't seen any draft documentation from AKRF on.
Jeff, can we get something, any additional information from AKRF? Did they do any land use and transportation?
Everything
study?
that we have was either on the website or they gave us a Dropbox links and that was provided to all three consultants.
So the answer is no. So I have a question. From what I've seen from AKRF, what they did was community engagement. And in your proposal, you have an additional 452 hours of community engagement.
That's optional, and we put that in because based on our conversation last time, it was our understanding that the town was not very satisfied with the engagement, so we gave you the option.
I don't know if it's the town or the town board. The town participated in the community engagement.
I'll agree, I would agree with her. I mean, I felt it was weak.
But
So I
there
think
was
it does need to follow, and you're outlining that you intend to do that, which I think.
Yes, in fact, one of the things that we discussed was that CDA had not been spoken to, that the departments hadn't been spoken to, that there were shareholders.
No, the
that we
committees
needed-
haven't either, but
Yes.
is that under community engagement?
That is, yes, I put
They
everything
lumped
under.
them together.
Oh, you lumped, okay. So
So
then-
there are stakeholders that were identified that hadn't been contacted, which really need to be a part of this process.
No, I understand that, I understand that you lumped it together, that makes
But-
a little bit more sense for me.
Right, and even if it is lumped under community engagement, we have discrete, bodies identified. And as Ms. Delcole said, we have the hours allocated and then the monies.
Did you refer to the BOA study at all?
The brownfield study?
Yes.
In our
Yes.
proposal, we did not, but we are aware of the study and,
Right.
and will take that into consideration as part of the proposal.
A lot of community engagement for that, a tremendous amount.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Just, there was.
Dawn, maybe you should come to the mic, just, you-
Uh,
you don't,
that's okay.
okay.
Community engagement also, we had a central advisory committee set up to do the comp plan, and they weren't used. I mean,
And-
they were contacted a couple times briefly, but there's a whole wealth of information from people that were selected on that committee, from the school district to the hospital to water, sewer, to environmental, and they weren't used. And,
So-
and to me, that was an absolute waste, and they need to be used. They need to be broken down in, the way I say, I'm not gonna tell you how to do your job, but from my little experience with the 2003 comp plan, that committee was then broken down into subcommittees, where if you were health-related, you brought in other health-related people. You sat, you talked, you put goals, and you put things together that could be used in the plan. None of this was done.
And I'd like to address that, please, because I've also included 12 online work session, and I call it an ad hoc committee. That's something I need to talk to you guys. H2M needs to talk to you guys to let us know who all should be a part of that. We defer to you. But, you know, what we have done here is, for example, Agricultural Advisory Committee and Farmland Preservation Committee, they should be together, because whatever they, you know, that's my opinion, that we could get cumulative information. So what we've done is we've thought this through as to what additional community engagement based on our conversation, we should have, and we included that in the in our proposal. So we tried to be cost effective in that, because if there are two agencies that have complementary role to play, it would be best to have them together in the same room, so that we don't get conflicting ideas, and then in that discussion, everything gets resolved, and we come with our goals, recommendations, or whatever their advisement would be.
Right. In comparing your proposal versus BFJ, the elephant in the room is you're over $800,000 if we include all the add-ons. They're $300,000. Have you seen the BFJ proposal?
We have.
Okay. How do you justify the amount you're looking to spend versus the amount they're looking to spend?
I believe our proposal is far more comprehensive. I believe that we put a lot more legwork into it, and I think it's demonstrated in the body of the proposal. And we believe that this is what's necessary for the town to achieve your goal of a comprehensive plan that's really going to help you steer development into the future. Does anybody have any comments on that?
So we're talking about more than double the costs on the other company. What's your experience with comprehensive plans?
So I've written numerous comprehensive plans, and I feel that our comprehensive plan is justified, because when we put in the hours, we've actually specified how many hours it would take. We made an assumption that you know, perhaps there won't be any information available, or very little information available in terms of you know, even say transportation from McLean. We don't know how much additional work AKRF did. So based on the information we have, based on our conversation when we presented the qual package, we came to we did our homework and came with a proposal that is comprehensive, is actually telling you what we're going to do and how many hours it would take for us to do the work. And one of the most important things I want to also point out is that we have divided, and if you look at phase 3 development of the comprehensive plan, we have not lumped three plans together under one, saying, okay, you know, we've actually spent time to understand how much work is available, how much work we would need to do. And for example, we use the 2003 comprehensive plan as our template, that, okay, these were the elements that that consultant did, and instead of reinventing the wheel, why don't we use that same template and put together our proposal? So that's one difference that I noticed, and in ours, we have each and every the goals and objectives, the land use plan, the agriculture and farmland preservation, which is a major issue, a major challenge in Riverhead, transportation, sustainability. You know, this was written 20 years ago. There has been changes with climate change, with sustainability, stormwater management issues. We took consideration of all that and how it's necessary. And most importantly, you know, with master plans, what happens is that this provides a policy framework for you to then adopt ordinances. And when we present that, we are going to give you solid recommendations that will give you a framework to then adopt ordinances. So, you know, it is essential for your master plan to be up to date with that level so that you can produce, actually have policies that can be implemented through ordinances.
I also noticed that you have optional things added to your
Yes,
comprehensive
correct. Yes.
that may be used, may not be used, so that may be something that plays its way out in the long run.
Those were added at Jeff's request. He asked that we look at an energy plan to actually do a megawatt study, which is not typical of a comprehensive plan.
Right.
We would need to engage, we can do that, we would need to engage our energy market to do that work. And it's a little bit different than a traditional comprehensive plan scope.
Where's that?
And as well, the code amendments as well. That's typically not part of a comprehensive plan. What is are the recommendations, but the actual writing of the code amendment in conjunction with your town attorney's office is typically not part of a comprehensive plan.
But that cost was included or not?
No, it's
Those
not.
were two separate
Beyond the
items.
800,000.
I think it's incorporated into that number. It's all right in that cost proposal.
Okay, we're waiting for copies from it. I know
Okay.
it's online,
Okay.
but it was only made available to the board, and we're discussing it in open forum, and we need to afford that to the public.
Yes, of course, of
That's
course.
So I have a question for you. So you reviewed the work that was done by the previous company, right? What's the value of that work?
I would not want to talk about other consultants.
Yeah, I think
I
that's
did-
more
I didn't- I
competitive.
thought I'd
I
ask.
would not want to do that.
Understood.
All I can say
Pitting
to
companies
you,
against each other.
I'm not trying to.
I would say to you, the town board, is that when we mentioned in our calls, when we came, most of us, almost all of us here have been on the other side. We all have public sector experience. We're very cognizant of public funds costs. We're very cognizant of that. And we gave you a very thorough, conservative estimate based on what we think realistically needs to be done. Now, should we have a discussion further and things change, we are happy to go back and review it. But at the same time, we do not want to come to you and try to give you something which is not at par. And as you know, you've worked with H2M, we are known for the quality of work we do. So, you know, and that's what you would get.
So one thing that concerns me, Jeff, in terms of the traffic study work that McLean has done, how come it seems like they're having a time of trying to get the results of that?
They got it, we got a Dropbox link that was sent to both BFJ and H2M.
So you have
We
it.
have everything produced by LKMA, my firm, GPI. We're the sub on the transportation traffic side. We have an excellent working relationship with LKMA. Myself, Dan Dresch, I retired this past
So
December.
you have all the information?
I was,
That's all, okay.
totally, we have 100%, we're in constant communication with
Good.
them
Okay.
on their work.
Okay, great, thank you.
Let me rephrase Bob's question a little bit different. The information that you've got from AKRF and from McLean, do you feel you got $300,000 worth of information?
I don't think we have a lot of information from AKRF. I think that that's why there are the qualifiers, I don't think I know that that's why the qualifiers are placed in our proposal, because we're really not certain if there is documentation out there that we haven't seen. Our expectation was that we would see draft element plans. We did not see that other than the economic development plan, correct?
No, that was a market analysis, a
Okay.
housing and market analysis. So we did not see that, and it was very thorough. So we are going to use that, but we did not see the scenic historic resources. There was a draft plan, but there were no recommendations or goals and objectives that were finalized. And we also need to talk to the recreation committee, we need to speak to the community development director. So, we will use it to the maximum extent practicable.
Can I ask this question, Integra, for Tim's, is, do you feel that before you present your final comprehensive plan, that you would need to validate any of the work that was given to you by AKRF?
We had actually, just so that I'm clear, when we looked at all the information, like for example, I think in the proposal, we've mentioned that we're making an assumption that the raw data is available, because we're looking at summary, and I printed it out, allowing solar on farmland is a tool towards preservation. Okay, but I need to understand who all were there, what was the discussion, because we'll use that information to basically make our recommendations or our analysis. Every data, I did, and to be honest with you, I've spent a lot of time actually writing this proposal, and they all know, and I prepared an Excel to say what we have, what we don't have, so that we can give a very true cost to you. So
Okay,
So you'll use that and have to re-ask the question anyway.
I wouldn't want to say that yet, because we use that to the maximum extent practicable for us to prepare a proposal. So, there are, we looked at that, we looked at your prior studies, and then we also spoke to you during the Qual's interview, and that's when we came up with our assumptions to write the proposal.
so I have a question. I know that the prior company interviewed all department heads. Was that made available, Jeff? That information was made
It's
available?
on the website.
It was made available. So that's why some of the community engagement, we kept it as optional, because things that you think, okay, we're happy with this, you don't need to do it, we're fine. But what happened was, I did department heads and put in 12 hours and whatever amount, because there were certain, like for example, we heard from the community development director that their opinion was not taken. So we want to ensure that we have people whose opinions were not taken into consideration, or information that wasn't clear enough. So we budgeted for that as well.
So in essence, you're starting again, because you're gonna ask the same.
Well,
No, not
Not
really.
really.
We will use any information that we can possibly use. Nobody has a desire to repeat, to do something over again. As San said, we all have government background, we're all very sensitive to the budget constraints that you're under, but we want to give you a quality document. We can't give you a quality document for $299,000. The secret component alone is over $200,000. That involves the preparation of a generic environmental impact statement. That in and of itself is an extremely comprehensive document that looks at various alternatives for all of the different items to be investigated. Lisa can certainly answer any questions you have on that, but that document alone is over $200,000.
I think what the board is asking, and I know Bob, you mentioned it, and Tim also, we're trying to see about how much we can salvage.
Of
That's the
course.
bottom line. And you can
course.
see it being asked in different ways. We're trying to see how much we can salvage. This is taxpayers' money. We know the critical importance of this document. It will be our roadmap for the next 20 years. And we are in the midst of gentrifying our town. And it's critical for us to have this working in conjunction with all the development that's happening. But again, and I'm glad that you mentioned, there are financial constraints on the town, and to start again with $800,000 from scratch. And unfortunately, the past company didn't meet our standards and our goals, and that's why you're here. So, anybody have any questions?
Yeah, I have a question. So it's not, what I'm gleaming from what you're saying, you can use about, please, use a percentage. I'm gonna use one, about 15% of what you've read
Probably.
online.
15?
No, we
15.
could use
No.
100%.
No, we could use 100.
We
No,
could
no,
use
no, no.
100% of what we've
Okay,
been
let me
provided.
rephrase that.
Okay.
You need to go to 100%, right? How much did you get so far? Did you get 10%
I
toward
would-
your 100? Did you get 15% toward your 100? I'm just curious.
I would say that the community engagement portion, I can tell you exactly. For the community engagement portion, I would say it's 90%, because they have done extensive community
That's
engagement.
about, what- yeah.
That's critical.
But, it's critical, but when we do community engagement, right? So for example, we use the software publicinput.com. We have a report ready, which was what they have, something similar. We use that. But we also have raw data, which we sometimes give it to our client if they want. So those are the assumptions, like if we have all that, we're not going to waste your money doing that.
Okay, so let's use that, right? So
Yeah.
community engagement is what percentage of your entire plan?
In this particular case, community engagement would be, I would say, in terms of,
Of the entire plan? What's,
the budget.
not the, you just give me, you can give me percentage. what
I
you're
would say
doing.
10%, 10, 15%.
Okay, so now I'm getting closer to the answer to my question. That's the majority of work that they did, so it's about 10% of the entire plan.
10 to 15.
10 to 15, yeah.
That's where I'm going with this, okay?
Okay.
I need to get from my head, okay? And Tim mentioned there was a really good committee made up of representatives of over the entire community, so that was not utilized. All right, thank you.
Going through the two comparisons of the two firms, one thing that jumped right out at me, and I thought this was kind of important to ask. In your proposal, you mentioned that it's almost certain that it's going to be a positive declaration. In BFJ's proposal, they're indicating it may be a negative declaration. Care to expound on that?
Yes, Lisa?
Expound.
In my experience with comprehensive plans, the most common procedure is to have a positive declaration and a draft generic environmental impact statement that then goes through a public review period. The reason for that is because the nature of comprehensive plans are so extensive. It's pretty much the largest planning action one can take in a community. So unless the recommendations coming out of the comprehensive plan are very narrowly focused and maybe mostly primarily focused on things like mitigation, where you could confidently say that the chances are that this would have no environmental impact or minimal environmental impact, it is the standard procedure for most comprehensive plans to foresee that there is the risk of having a significant environmental impact, and that those have to be looked at more carefully. Now, of course, I'm dealing with some of the same limitations here in terms of we don't yet have goals and recommendations for the comprehensive plan. So once you do have a positive declaration, you're required to do scoping. And scoping helps you dial in what exactly you need to cover in that draft generic environmental impact statement. I've taken a very broad view of what is likely to need to be included in that comprehensive, but without knowing the specific recommendations of the comprehensive plan, I can't know for certain which categories we will definitely have to look at versus which we may be able to say, well, in this area, there's no real risk of a significant environmental impact.
Dawn, did you have something to say?
If we do,
You speak up.
environmental impact statement, all our zoning adoptions then tag off of that, and we don't need to do separate, we just do supplemental if we need to for those adoptions, correct?
Just for the board's education, in terms of SECRA, a GEIS is going to be required for this project, no matter who does it. That's a state law requirement.
Understood.
You're going to have to make a finding at the conclusion of that the plan will have no significant adverse environmental impact.
So-
And then when we do the
It's almost
follow-up
certain that
local
it
law
will.
adoptions,
I mean, I don't see how it couldn't.
you cannot do that. Because if you find that there's a negative impact, you're gonna have to go back and redo your plan to make it sure that it does not have an environmental impacts. You can.
I'm
Or,
glad you
or the
mentioned-
plan needs to, I mean, you have to show that you're mitigating to the extent possible and minimizing to the extent possible.
Can I have, Dawn, can you please expand on your statement?
Well, I'm just,
Okay.
I think your proposal.
She has to come forward
Yeah.
because I can't hear you on
We can't
TV.
They can't, yeah, sorry, Don.
I know what she's referring, she is, when you do the draft generic environmental impact statement, generic environmental impact statement is used only for certain types of broad-scale projects instead of an environmental impact statement for a very specific project. So a comprehensive plan, we have this generic environmental impact statement. Very specific actions taken under that plan would still require their own seeker analysis. However, the generic environmental impact statement can encompass some of your broad recommendations. So for instance, if you're planning rezonings, the seeker for this plan will handle the seeker for your rezoning actions. A specific project within that rezoning area would still require its own environmental impact statement potentially, depending on the project. But when it comes time to actually then make the zone updates, you wouldn't have to do a separate seeker process.
What she just said is exactly
Do we
true.
have an extra one of these?
Does everybody understand what was just said?
Yes.
They're gonna be prepared a generic
one more.
environmental impact statement.
Tim and Alex, they could take this copy.
And the follow-up actions, when we start preparing laws based on it, they have to go through a separate seeker citation and review, and it has to be consistent with the generic. If it's not consistent, then it's not, we couldn't go forward with it. So it's not as encompassing, but we do have to do a separate seeker analysis on all the follow-up to make sure that it is consistent with the findings of the updated plan.
I'm glad you mentioned scoping, because I have a couple of questions on that. So I have this. Thanks. You talk about, in your proposal, for a scoping process with a hearing for the DGIS.
The hearing is optional.
Okay, understood. Do you recommend the hearing? Do you suggest the hearing?
I would in the case of Riverhead, and the reason is because it's a large community with a lot of interests, and I think it's one of the ways to best get in the input in early in the process in terms of what the draft generic environmental impact statement needs to contain.
Okay. Now, going along with that, you indicate that the scoping should be completed before the draft plan?
Yes.
Okay. I'm not sure BFJ agrees with that.
I saw their timeline for seeker, and I don't believe it's feasible, because you have to do seeker to evaluate the impacts of the action. And the action in this case is going to be adopting those recommended changes in the that the comprehensive plan recommends.
And then you have a
so-
30-day wait period, correct?
For,
After that?
for scoping.
Yes.
Yes, so you have scoping, while you don't have a public hearing, you do have a public comment period of 30 days, and then you can finalize that scope, and the scope is what's defining what's included in the draft environmental impact statement. So then you can draft that environmental impact statement, and after that's done, you do need to then have your 30 days, your public hearing, your 30 days for that. Once you do that, we do the final generic environmental impact statement based on those comments. With all the comments we collect during that public comment period will have to be answered, quantified, answered, and written out and responded to. And that has to be done as part of the final environmental impact statement and before we can adopt findings. Now, the timeline for adopting findings and adopting the comprehensive plan, those can happen simultaneously.
But those are, just to add, those are statutory time periods, so they can't be changed.
Right,
So,
understood.
anybody who puts out anything of a shorter time period, it can't be done. And this is, a part of the plan that's often challenged by the public, so you need to follow all of those steps in order to really protect the town from any potential liability.
My point is, there's two different thoughts here between both proposals, and I'm just trying to get at the bottom what I think is gonna be better for us and which one we should go with. The draft plan must be complete before the 30-day public comment plan, correct? Or it should be.
It should be, not that there can be no changes, but if you don't know what your
Right, you're not presenting a full plate if you don't have that presented or completed prior to the 30-day.
know, there can be some overlap in the preparation of a comprehensive plan in terms of preparing for doing seeker. You know, we have communication within the H2M team, you know, we'll know the background data on the communities, the background community analyses, but to actually enter into scoping, you need to know what,
It makes sense,
what the
right.
action is.
Right.
Does make sense. Okay, anybody else have any questions?
What's your timeline?
You good?
We did include that as well.
Yeah, I just wanted
And
some.
we are using a very aggressive timeline because we are thinking most of the community engagement, typically when we do a master plan from scratch, we give 1 year timeline, and that's.
So where are we now? So
We are saying 3 months has already been done with the community engagement, so we gave 9 months. So we'll try and get it done in 9 months. But there is a caveat that we anticipate, but this is, that it's aggressive, but it's realistic, and with an assumption that adherence to meeting deadlines is contingent upon receiving timely feedback from the town of Riverhead. So from our end, we meet our deadlines. Like if you
That makes
said-
100% sense.
Yeah.
And you can't have a timeline if you're not getting your information in a timely
And
manner.
we will make it happen.
Now, that
Well,
timeline doesn't conflict.
I've assigned Councilman Hubbard.
Sorry,
Yeah.
Lisa.
I just want to
clear, it's a
clarify that
comp
that
plan.
timeline's for the draft plan, so that there then is the, once you have that draft, then the seeker timeline starts.
And how
Yes,
long
I'm
would
sorry.
that take? So now we're looking at a year?
That would be, I would say, it can be faster. I mean, again, a little bit depends on if that scope narrows in terms of what we have to consider in seeker, then there's less sections to write and prepare. But there's, again, statutory timelines in terms of public comment periods. Yeah, I would say a year is what I would feel
Okay, so
comfortable.
we're back to a year. So I just want to clarify one point. I know just a second ago, you mentioned us being engaged, the town engagement. You're going to have our full support. We all want this to happen. We need this to happen. I have assigned Councilman Tim Hubbard to be the liaison to work with you guys, and he is 100% for this. And I also have Councilman Bob Kern recently had joined in, so you're gonna have 2 council people working with you.
I'm sorry, the young woman who was speaking about environmental, can you
Sure.
just say your name again for the record?
Lisa Rickmers.
Yes, to ensure that you get timely responses, and they're both, I have every faith in them that they're gonna be able to move this forward. As long as you work with them, you're not gonna have a problem.
And one thing I also want to add is that we have a Riverhead office. So we are in town. Anybody needs us, we'll be there for you 24/7. So that's H2M assurance.
Correct.
So one other question, so, I keep going back to this percentage thing, blah, 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 right? Because I really need to understand. So you have 3 months' worth of work from AKRF, is what I'm claiming.
Well, typically when we do this, we try to do the community engagement portion in 3 months. So they have
Okay,
done
okay.
since 2021, I think August, until April of 2022. So they've done, I would say, give and take 6 months to 7 months of work.
Yeah,
We've
okay. Thank you.
Sorry, yes.
I get it.
I have just some points I just want to stress that I think are very important for this comp plan in particular, and I just want to mention them to make sure that we're on the same page. First and foremost, we need to look at our industrial zoned areas. They're outdated. They're in areas now that have, over the past 19 years, become more residential, and we're getting our doors knocked off of us for development in those areas. So we need to strongly look at the industrial areas, particularly in the Calverton area, and decide what we can and what we can't do. We know it's a two-edged sword. We know that if we remove the industrial zoning, we're gonna lose tax base. And that's something the residents have to understand. But on the other side of it is, it's a beautiful area, and I'm not sure I wanna open up my back door and look at a 50-foot high warehouse in my backyard when it's a beautiful, historic, farming type atmosphere. Number two is TDRs, which I know you're well aware of. That's something that's been a long time coming that we need to really put a strong emphasis on to get that correct. We need to look at the downtown with the pattern book. It's a lot of work has been done there, and it's pretty close, but we still need to tweak a few things. Anaerobic digesters, solar farms, battery storage facilities. We need to look at it not as individually, but as the cumulative effect of every one of those that has on the town and on the zoning in particular where they're located. Anaerobic digesters and battery storage, we don't even have in our code. So we need to know where they belong, where the right place is for them. We understand the need for them. Or I should say, I'm speaking for myself, I understand the need for them, but we need to do it right and put them in the right location. This also includes now, just not warehouses, but the term is logistics centers. A warehouse, I buy something in bulk, I store it. I keep it there as I need it, I go and get it. Logistics centers are just transfer points where somebody comes in, dumps off a shipment, another truck pulls up, loads it up, and then takes it on its way somewhere else. Very different from a warehouse. Do those centers belong in a residential area, even though it's zoned industrial? I don't really think so. The truck use for the roads in the area, these are all things we strongly have to look at. Apartment saturation for the whole town, not just the downtown area. There was a number put out of 500 apartments many years ago, town-wide. Well, we've about exceeded that just in the downtown area now. So we need to look at that. Those are my 5 that there's many other things involved in this, and I get it, but those are 5 that come to the top of my head that I want to make sure that you're aware of, if it hasn't been given to you already, that these are things we need to address first and foremost.
I would like to thank you for pointing them out. We did consider all of that when we wrote our land use plan, because your land use plan will be recommending rezoning, will be recommending what the bulk standards should be, will be recommending, we have a TDR specialist who'll be working with us for the TDR portion. And that is exactly why we have the number we gave, because one of the things I also want to mention, I did read about the 500 cap, that there was some public comments saying that, oh, that cap should be removed. So we need to get a clear direction. What does the town want to do? Housing, workforce housing, all these are essential things that you need. And our master plan with these different elements, and I've mentioned it it's emboldened on like page 7 or something, that it's, although they are discrete elements, they won't be prepared in a silo. Everything, there'll be interconnectivity between all of them. They're linked with each other. So that's something, I'm glad you mentioned that. We did think about all of those things. And mind you, we do have our office here, and we're the sewer and
Yeah, well, we're sewer and water engineers, and I mentioned the last time we were here, we have an energy market that specializes in battery energy storage, in solar farms, so we're very familiar with the parameters, what needs to be involved, proximity to substations and so on, so we're able to
I'd like to
address
just
all
add
of that.
two extra points. I would like to add the redefinition of the Route 58 corridor and how it can be repurposed. And any of these considerations is what their impact on the school district would or could be, and how we can mitigate any additional impacts on the school district.
And that's exactly what, when we presented a calls package, I think I may have mentioned that really getting the right kind of ratables is important. And, we've had experience writing master plans, economic development plans. So one thing good about the prior consultant is that they did do a market analysis, which we'll use in its entirety. So, but we'll be giving you recommendations. We'll be looking at the downtown area. We'll be looking at the different areas, and everything will be linked with each other.
Great.
And I would also like to add to that list, EV charging stations. It's coming.
Absolutely.
We just opened Evolve New York, PSE&G in the governor's office provided us, we had the ground opening earlier this week with 4 locations right off Main Street, and I'm sure that it's critical, especially in the EPCAL area, Calverton area, the Jamesport area, to possibly have, make recommendations of where they could be placed logistically, where people can just come in and out and move on their way. And in addition, I don't see it, I might have missed it, because it's a lot of work here, I know I looked at it earlier. We need to have updates to the public, where you would come to a town board meeting every,
Yeah, we
yeah,
included
okay.
that.
What pages do you have?
It's in, we have it in,
Okay.
on page 5, starting page 5 through 7, we have community engagement. And then actually, in the itemized cost estimate, we've put in, board meetings and the visions.
That's what I'm talking about, the board meetings to
Yes, yes.
update the public.
So we are recommending.
So that's gonna be an additional cost to update the public?
It's
It's
all in
included.
the, it's all
Included,
included,
okay.
it's all included in this. So if you look at the community engagement portion, we've mentioned there'll be one visioning session during the beginning to have everybody's input. The second one would be a presentation of the draft comprehensive plan in person via an open house. So what we would do is people can come in and like a couple of hours, we'll come here, we'll have an open house presentation. We can get people's input. So that's one, and then one meeting to present the plan and get comments. So that's another. And then 3 town board meetings
Okay, for updates to the
Yes.
public.
throughout.
Great,
Because
perfect.
they're all public meetings.
So I have a question. Have you guys worked, and H2M may have, with agrivoltaics?
What's that?
Agrivoltaics?
Yeah, I'm sure our energy department has.
Yes, the
but-
energy market is.
Because, yeah, I mean, there's not enough, this way you get dual use out of the land.
Correct.
you know,
Absolutely.
so,
It is, it is
I
a
did mention.
path that
Yeah.
some comprehensive plans are undertaking, and I agree with Bob, it should be something, again, the dual use, where you can farm and you can have solar together, or
that's-
some type of other energy producing method is, it's out there, right?
Yes,
Yes.
and
new.
I've actually, on page 11, under task 6, agriculture and farmland preservation plan, the last but one paragraph I've actually mentioned in the last 2 sentences about agrivoltaics and recreational cannabis. Like, these are the emerging trends here. We
They
have
are trends.
experience doing that, and really the bottom line is you do not want to compromise on your prime agricultural soils.
That-
Because
and-
when
That's critical.
There's no- yeah.
Absolutely, and when this came about, solar farms came about like 12 or 13 years ago, where this was an issue we faced in New Jersey, where people were, this is inherently beneficial, let's have it. But really, no thought given to the fact that preserving prime agricultural soils is key. So,
And we don't see it in New York, but we see it outside of New York.
that is correct.
And so let's get with the times, right? Let's move forward.
So you would engage with Ag and Markets, for example?
Absolutely.
To see where they are?
Yes.
Okay.
And that's again, these are, it's 29 pages. How
Okay.
much, we try to keep as succinct as possible, but
Yeah,
absolutely, that all is built into the hours and the cost.
Okay, thank you.
Just for clarification for everybody, the material that was handed out today has already been handed out to you and has been previously posted on the website.
Okay, as of now. Okay, so it's available for the public to view. Perfect. That's
And,
it?
I just, to Tim's point about, and this is where I think tax, concerning the tax base, right? We have industrial land. We had no industrial land, right? Our schools would expand to the point where they blow up, right? So we do need industrial, we need that tax base, so that balance is critical.
Should always be a consideration.
And also, I know our building heights are 30, but I also know standard now for warehousing and logistics is 40, and it actually exceeds that with a little bit, but, okay.
But when we examine that and when we write our plans, we will put forth recommendations. And one of
Right,
the
I
things that H2M does in our master plans is we call it an implementation matrix. So the recommendations are set forth in a matrix format. We identify the time frame, we identify the implementing party, and then we give like a checklist, like, okay,
Okay.
done, done, done. And one of the things I want to add, and we want to give you a plan that is going to be workable and good for 10 years. Ideally, it's recommended that every 10 years you re-examine to see how much of your plan is valid, because your ordinances have to also be updated and you need to have a policy framework. So we will be presenting to you, like I had said the first time around, a livable, breathable document, not just on the shelf, but
Well,
implementable.
when you say breathable, to me, it really needs to be every 5 years. I mean, if you look at our comp plan from 2003, right? It's like a business plan. You can't live on a business plan for 20 years. And the way everything is changing, there's a lot of changing going on. So, but I appreciate at least 10. I go for 5, but okay.
You go for 5?
Absolutely.
Well,
We
we're at
wouldn't
19
be
right
in the
now.
situation we are now with industrial land.
We're at
blah, blah, blah.
19 right now, unfortunately.
We'll try to get you 10.
Okay, give
No,
us
and-
10, we'll
and
take 10.
We take, the reason I'm saying 10 is because based on my experience, that's a more, I would say, the trends don't change in 5 years as much as they do in 10.
It's more
And
the
that-
technology that I'm,
Correct.
Yes.
okay.
And that's what's
So-
driving that
And,
Yeah.
with
and
the
the
time.
language would be generic enough that you can make updates, that
Okay,
it
all
doesn't.
right.
So-
Right, thank you.
Okay, anyone else? Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks so much.
Have a good day.
You too.
Thank you all.
We get a little time between the two.
I'll
And
wait.
we can reach out if we have further questions.
Yes, of course, yes.
Oh,
of
great,
course,
thank
yes.
you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you for coming in today, appreciate it.
Do we get a little time out before the next
We're
one?
rolling, we can't,
Oh, where's the next group?
yeah, we're rolling, so.
Oh, all right. So,
Okay, so we
we
are,
gotta wait for them to
I
leave.
came out with that report, so I'm gonna sign it.
I mean,
Yeah, I just gotta say hello. How are you? How's your better half?
She's doing very well.
Good. Haven't seen her for a
Thank you all very much.
Thank you, thank you.
That's what I thought. Yeah, she's a highway engineer for Andre Sorrentino, the new superintendent.
Nice.
That's all he said.
Pat, you may want to write me a document on my card or something.
They are, but that might not be a bad thing.
Thank you again.
thank you.
Thank you very much.
You did well. You had all the answers.
Good job.
Yeah, she had all the answers.
Thanks, Jeff.
We have that.
Some,
Today
Fun
is-
game we're playing here
I
today.
know.
It's really a lot of fun.
So good.
Okay, Jeff, can you bring in the next group?
Ready for the next group?
Yes, we are.
Coming in the other door, Jeff.
Maybe I should just keep
Okay, and for our next discussion, we have representatives from BFJ, the other prospective planning applicant to complete the comprehensive plan update. Jeff, you're up again and take it away.
Next consulting team is BFJ. The material, the proposal has already been posted on the website. And I have no further introduction other than Frank Fish is the lead on the project, and Frank can introduce everybody else.
Yeah, we just, by the way, we thought that questions on our timeline and team might come up, and also on budget, so there's nothing new that I'm gonna hand you, but it's just for reference for you. But if we could give you just a few copies of this.
If you could just leave the copies up for
Yeah,
the
I'll leave
press.
copies out for the press. then this is just the, from our budget page.
Oh, great.
So you'll have budget. Just make sure that everybody has that. Jeff, you've got all this stuff, but I'll give it to you anyways. Yeah, and I think I gave you enough for everybody. I just want to make sure, Tim, you get it. Everybody's got enough? Yeah. By the way, I'm just going to briefly introduce and turn this to Noah, but I wanted us to, the four of us who are here today, is the first little page here so you know who we are. You haven't met the two of us. At the last meeting, it was Noah and myself, so I think you know me. I'm a principal of the firm, a founding principal actually. Would be involved mostly in this study on the zoning aspects of it. And Noah?
Noah Levine, I'll be the principal in charge for this project. And my family happens to live out in Sag Harbor, so if I have to make any late meetings, it won't be a problem for me. But also, I just finished the Southampton Comprehensive Plan, which was adopted last month. So freed up for some new work, but I'll pass it to Sarah.
Hi, I'm Sarah Yackel, I'm principal of BFJ. I specialize and run our SEEKR, the Environmental Review Group. I've got more than 20 years of experience in the State Environmental Quality Review Act. And I'm happy to answer questions. We do have, as a firm and individually, quite a bit of experience doing generic environmental impact statements on comprehensive plans. We did the GEIS for the New Rochelle comp plan. Recently, we did the Mount Kisco comp plan and generic EIS, as well as Ossining, are some recent examples.
Hi everyone, my name is Mark Frecker. I'm a senior planner at BFJ. I would be the project manager, and I am currently working on comprehensive plans in Seacliff, in building Seacliff, as well as White Plains. But my work at BFJ also, I have quite a few experiences in transportation planning, looking at parking studies and general transportation planning as well.
So,
I just wanted to mention just one thing on a question that we had and we've tried to address is that, as you know, we've, in our proposal, we've looked over all of the AKRF material. We intend to use that material. We've also had a back and forth, basically with Vin Corrado at McLean, and they told us that this will be up to the town board, the decision to use them as part of the plan. We would like to, so if you're comfortable with their work, this is your decision, but we are comfortable using the AKRF work as well as McLean's work. We think they've done some good traffic work, but they tell us
What's the quality
that would
of
be
the
up to
work that they produced so far?
I
I know
think
it's minimal, because they should have produced a lot more, but
Yeah.
what, in your review, what's the quality?
From what we've seen, we believe we can use it. I do want to emphasize something, and that is, in our org chart, George Akamar has worked here before. We have our own transportation group. So if you decide we can use them, which we think their work is good and solid work, we will use it, because we don't want to have to reinvent the wheel on that. But on our budget, just so you know, on the budget line, you'll see there's two chapters that we have in the budget under task 3.5, that's phase 2, 3.5. About a third of the way down, you'll see transportation and
Yes.
mobility. We list them there, LKMA. So we have not put in a budget line there because we assumed that you might be, as far as we could tell from just reading the newspaper and, talking to Jeff, we don't know that you're displeased or anything with their work.
With McLean, you're talking about?
With McLean, yes.
Okay.
So if you choose to have McLean finish their work, we'll use it all. I've been back and forth with Vin in that office, with Vincent Corrado. And so if you are okay with that, then we will use their work. And in the same way, the one other one is infrastructure and utilities. They're obviously civil engineers as well as transportation engineers, so we would use their work. And that is what forms the basis of our fee, which is basically a $300,000 fee. And as you can see, that fee involves information on including both scoping and EIS, a DEIS, and an FEIS.
What
So
was
you
the
can see
cost,
that.
Dawn, for the McLean study?
I don't know
Yes. Jeff, do we know the cost of the McLean study?
I do.
Is it all completed? That's, just,
No,
so
we-
what's it gonna cost to complete their work?
No, I think they're paying, we already paid to
Yes,
complete
out
the
of
work.
the-
Oh.
So it minus is,
I do have the information for
go
you.
ahead, go ahead.
The total budget for the comp plan was 675. Out of that, McLean was 136.
Okay. 136,000.
And they have 123,000 of that left.
Okay, so
Oh.
they,
Okay, that's what I'm looking for.
So we're
That's a
planning.
huge amount,
Yeah.
obviously.
We feel that that's pretty healthy, and my back and forth with them is, again, to tell them that we propose, if it is all right with you. They said they need approval from you, the town board, but
Okay,
if
so
you
that's something
approve
we'll
that,
address
that's something you address.
later on.
We're happy to use their work.
Okay.
We think it's good work, and we think.
Well, they have a good reputation,
Yeah.
so hopefully
I
they'll
think
be
that's the
good.
key component, is that we're relying on you, so you need to tell us if it's
Right,
good work or
and we
not.
Yeah.
have, and we have an
You're
in-house,
the expert.
Right,
we have an in-house transportation group that can do that.
right.
Yeah.
And-
Now, I have a question here on phase 4, task 4.1. You have a secret EAF and a secret determination of $6,000. We've been told that a secret can cost over $200,000.
The total fee for phase 4, the environmental review, and its total is $114,000. That first task 4.1 is really kicking off the process. So in order to commence with scoping and the GEIS, the generic EIS, you have to first do the EAF, coordinate lead
then do the
agency,
scoping.
and then make your secret determination,
Right.
which is either that POSDEC or NEGDEC. I think the proposal references a NEGDEC and then provides an option for a POSDEC. We have experience doing both. There's plenty of comprehensive plans, including Southampton, that we just finished, that did that NEGDEC route, because there was no recommendations in that plan it was very protective of the environment overall in those recommendations. And so that one, Frank and Noah went the NEGDEC route. And this, we did prepare the proposal assuming a positive declaration. We can talk through that timeline if you would like. But, this includes sort of all of the steps as required by SEQR and all the statutory requirements. So following that SEQR determination, you can begin scoping. There is an option in scoping for a public scoping meeting. There has to be an opportunity for public comment. It does not have to be a scoping session, but that is one way of achieving that. And then following the close of scoping, you then have, you would all adopt a final scope, and then you would prepare that final, or the draft generic environmental impact statement from that scope. You'll see in our timeline that we are proposing to start SEQR rather early in the process.
Good.
There is, in the regulations, it does recommend starting SEQR as early in the process as possible. We propose around month 5 or 6 to begin with that EAF process, because the EAF process takes about 2 months to get through the coordinated review. There's a 30-day review to circulate your notice of intent to be lead agency. A comprehensive plan is a type 1 action under SEQR. And then following that, then you begin the formal scoping process. But there's a lot of room here for overlap. There's no reason that we can't be drafting our scoping document during that 30-day coordinated review period. So as soon as you're lead agency, you can begin public scoping. There's also no reason we can't be drafting portions of the EIS while scoping's going on, because we know there's going to be a land use section. We know there's a project description. We know there'll be transportation. So we can be writing and pulling in those existing conditions before scoping is finalized.
So in essence, we're talking about an environmental review of a little over $100,000,
Correct.
That's correct.
not 200,000.
Correct. It's 114.
About 114,000.
114.
Yep.
Okay.
It's also worth mentioning that, because we reviewed all of the AKRF work, and it appears that from the documents and the folders that were shared to us by Jefferson, a lot of the work is kind of embedded in some of the environmental work, even though they never kickstarted the process. There is a preferred alternative that talks about TDR recommendations, that talks about other recommendations, Route 58, other industrial areas. We haven't looked through it closely enough to say these are the way we want to go. That will happen if you look at the timeline in the first 3 months. What we want to do is basically synthesize all of that information, present back to you. This is what we know. This is what we've gathered both from the public outreach and as well as from the existing condition documents done by AKRF. Here's where we are. That way we can kind of move forward, but we want to kind of get some agreement with you at that kind of 3-month stage so that we can say, you know, all these land use goals and recommendations that are in there, because there are some, it's not the entire document, but there are some there that we can build upon, are they okay? And then same thing with the public outreach. There's a lot of data, there are survey results, there's a lot of memos from meetings, but can we kind of consolidate that into themes? You know, really kind of group that and make sense of it in a way that is understandable and readable as opposed to just, you know, memos. We want to make this as easy as possible for you to give us feedback on whether or not we're going in the right direction.
And I would say,
You've seen
oh, sorry.
H2M's proposal?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
How do you justify 300,000 versus over 800,000?
Actually, if you look, for me, the simple way I viewed it is AKR has $600,000 contract, I guess, plus contract with you.
675.
675, exactly. And we feel that they did a couple $100,000 worth of work that we can utilize. Not all of it, not every, but they did a lot. For instance, we have our own economic group, Urbanomics. They do all kinds of fiscal impacts. For instance, if we get into the industrial zone, and things you mentioned to us that are some of your concerns about how much industry, the offshoot taxes coming in versus going to partly, if it were residential impacts in a school district. Urbanomics does that. They're in our proposal, Tina Lund and Peter First. So we can do that. But in answer to your question, we intend to use both the AKRF work and, if you say so, your Transportation McLean's work. And that's how we can bring this in.
And you
The other-
also, over $100,000 less to do the SECRA
Correct.
review.
Let me tell you the secret to that, I think. You probably can tell from my hair, I have a little bit of experience with SECR. When it was started in New York State and the reform to SECR, I was involved in both of those. And there were several ways to do generic environmental impact statements. One way, in the earlier days, that I saw is that, oh, you waited till the plan was done and then you did the environmental impact statement. I think over time, many of us who do a lot of comprehensive plans, and we've done over 25 comprehensive plans just in the last decade. We're finishing, Sarah's directing now the White Plains Comprehensive Plan. We did Nassau County's comprehensive plan. We just finished Southampton, which was voted unanimously to adopt about 2 weeks ago, so we're kind of happy with it. But the other way to do it, we found, is more efficient and therefore less expensive and enables the public to have a better participation, is to begin SECR when you're doing the plan. And that, I believe, is what the state regs anticipate. In other words, we don't want you declaring yourself lead agency for SECR when the plan's done. You need to declare yourself lead agency. In fact, if we were retained, we'd suggest you declare yourself lead agency to carry out SECR, as you can see in the 5th or 6th month here, so that we get underway. And if you choose to do the EIS, we already are able to do scoping. When we get to the public hearing on the plan, in many communities, what we do is also the comment period on the DGEIS. Because the public sees the plan, then they see the DGEIS, they can comment on both. We just did that in Ossining, New York, on a contract that was approximately, Ossining was about 400,000. But we've done, for instance, the Nassau County contract that we did was basically a $500,000 contract. We're very comfortable with our fee here, and we believe that if you do SECR the way we've proposed, it's more efficient, it's better for the public, and it's less expensive.
The danger that
So that's
we
the-
see in starting SECR, sort of once you have that draft plan, is that it then sits, it has the potential to sit on a shelf for 8, 9, 10 months or longer. And because SECR is an iterative process and comprehensive planning is iterative, there may be things that come up as part of the SECR analysis that could inform those recommendations in the plan. And ultimately, when you get to that final EIS, you'll also have a final plan at the same time. And so they're kind of moving together, and so that they're totally in sync and informing each other. And I think that's really important to versus sort of finishing one, putting that aside, and then starting the other.
And that's why we can do it for the amount of money we think, because we've chosen, we think, a way to do seeker that I think, let's put it, many planners, very good firms that we know, are doing it now this way. Rather than saying, oh, we'll complete the plan, then we'll do seeker. As Sarah just said, you want both. You want the environmental effects to inform the plan to inform the DGIS. And if you can do a public hearing on the plan and the comment period on the DGIS at the same time, it's ideal. It's
Because you
ideal
want
to
that
do it.
final document, the final environmental document to reflect the final plan. And if they don't, you may, if you finish seeker and then you have another hearing on the plan and there's additional changes, you may have to go back and reopen seeker if something new comes up. So you want to kind of keep them moving together so that you're not in a situation where a recommendation, maybe there's a brilliant idea at that final, hearing on the comp plan, but it's different than what was in the final EIS and may have an impact, and now you have to go back and open seeker again. You really want to avoid doing that as much
By
as
the way, that's the
possible.
last thing you want to have to do is to reopen seeker. It's costly. You have to explain that to the public, what you're doing, why you're doing it. So we think doing seeker at the same time as the plans develop, holding the comment period on the DGIS at the same time as your public hearing on the plan. Then, all the comments you get from the public hearing, we come back with you at the same time you decide what revisions are we making to the draft. Now, that's the FEIS. We do the final environmental impact statement at the same time, so that you've got that ready to adopt your plan. Because you gotta have the FEIS and then the findings before you can adopt your plan. So how do you, if you do seeker later and you just wait, you can't adopt your plan. You had told us, well, Madam Supervisor, you meant to us try to do this in a year. You can't do that. It's not possible to do that without doing seeker simultaneously. And that's what we propose.
Because you can't adopt your plan until seeker is complete.
You can't adopt, you can't take an action. By the way, we just had this in Southampton 2 weeks ago, and I reminded them again on the resolutions. Must make the determination of significance to complete seeker. In Southampton's case, that was a neg deck. We're not assuming that here. They made that first, then they adopted the plan. You cannot adopt a plan without completing all the steps of seeker and either making the findings on the EIS or a neg deck on the EAF. Here we would expect findings on the EIS. That's why we costed it out about $114,000 to do that.
But do you anticipate this would be POSDEC?
Yes.
Yes. Yeah. You're just so much, you're a little bit bigger than the village of Southampton. And in Southampton's case, I would say that while we anticipate it, I don't want to.
It's not a foregone.
It's not a foregone conclusion.
Understood.
In Southampton's case, they came back with us the same thing many villages have said to us, that we'd never adopt something that had a significant adverse impact. And Southampton's, the recommendations in it generally are sort of tightening up. Some of the zoning recommendations are sort of more tightening up the code, those recommendations, and therefore they're beneficial on the environment. And Southampton made that decision.
I mean, the other opportunity here is if, the recommendations that ultimately come out of this are fairly restrictive and overall protective of the environment, which we would anticipate they would be, there may be an opportunity to tighten up that seeker budget and use a little bit more of that budget for the plan itself. You may be able to do a little bit more if you can keep that seeker budget tighter. It's always sort of a best guess at this stage because we don't ultimately know what those recommendations will be. We have, I think, a sense of sort of the overall direction, but.
And I think what Sarah's saying is that I think we feel that there's a comfortable budget in there, even with that it's so much less than our competitors. We feel comfortable with it. We can't speak to their proposal, but we feel comfortable with the scope and budget that we've proposed. And I think that's all that we can do, is speak with confidence that we feel that we can get it done as proposed.
$114,000 isn't nothing.
Yeah.
You can do a lot of work
And,
for
and
that.
AKRF has done a lot of work on figures. There are, I think, 36 figures, land use, existing zoning, hamlet areas. You can go through and see all that was done for the EIS, for the GEIS, that we could bring in. We could either use those maps as is, or hopefully AKRF will participate and give us the data so we can kind of bring them into our updated format. That's something that we'll work out later, but there's work there. It's not nothing, and work that would take a significant amount of time on our part to do if we started from scratch.
By the way, the budget we've put in is a very comfortable budget for a comprehensive plan. We have done comprehensive plans ranging from, well, Southampton's plan was basically a $90,000 plan.
Was that that's the
That's the
village,
village.
not the town?
Not the town.
Okay.
Town would be a larger area, but
Right,
the
right,
village was
understood.
basically a $90,000 plan. We're doing one in Village of Seacliff right now. That's $95,000 plan. We're used to doing comprehensive plans efficiently and within a reasonable budget. And $300,000 we feel here, given the work that's been done and that we can use.
Using McLean,
McLean?
using,
I mean, that's the other caveat, is that it
AKRF.
doesn't include that.
Given those pieces, then we can do this for $300,000.
and lowering the cost of the environmental review.
And we've got the cost of the environmental.
To
we
114?
Put in at 114. If we do it simultaneously with the plan, which we believe is the best way to do this, both for you, the town board, and for the public, so that the two, you understand the impacts of
And
every sort
One
of
of the things to
recommendation.
keep in mind is that the existing conditions, so a half of a draft generic EIS is existing conditions. And those are the same existing conditions that we'll have developed for the plan. You're not recreating the wheel when you do the EIS. You have all that background work already.
Okay.
So you're just pulling it in, and then it's the analysis piece that's what is in that budget, really.
I have a question. So you did the comp plan for New Rochelle.
Yes.
Now, New Rochelle, I don't want to confuse it with Rochester, but if I'm not mistaken, they put buildings in the ground in 3 months?
Well,
That's, yes,
Sarah,
I
go
can
ahead.
speak to that.
Yeah,
So there's
please.
a couple different things happening. I've had up most of our work in New Rochelle. There was the comprehensive plan which we wrote, and at the same time, our comprehensive plan did include zoning, but it was separate from the zoning that they were doing under the downtown overlay zone.
Oh, okay.
That was a public-private partnership with a firm called RDRXR. We were representing the city reviewing all of their work and participated in drafting that zoning and the review of the environmental document on behalf of the city. But that generic EIS is unique in the sense that it was essentially, I don't want to say entitling, because they still have to go through a site-specific seeker, but they approached it almost like an entitlement where it analyzed in great detail a build-out of 10,000 units, several million square feet of development, so that when an applicant, and it was an overlay zone, so that when an applicant
Okay.
came in on an actual site, they were getting through the planning board process in about 2 to 3 meetings. And they were doing site-specific seeker, which we were reviewing, and making sure that they didn't exceed any of the thresholds in the GEIS. The real value in a GEIS is this, what we call like the chapter 6, which is future actions, and it defines all of the sort of future steps, a site-specific development or a zoning action or whatever subsequent action that could happen under the comprehensive plan, what those things would need to do. So are there specific studies that would need to be done? Is it a site-specific traffic? Is it hazmat? Is it, a water sewer on a site-specific study? Those kinds of things. And so in New Rochelle's case, as long as you kind of were under those maximum thresholds, you kind of breezed through. There were a lot of
Smart
fees.
move.
There were a
Okay.
lot of
All right,
fees to
thank
pay.
you. I don't
We
wanna-
did establish a fair share mitigation fund, which you can do through a GEIS.
Did you refer to the BOA study at all when you put your proposal together, the brownfield study?
We didn't refer to, you mean the study that's ongoing? We
The
were.
one that was completed
The
in
brownfield.
2016.
Brownfields up.
Brownfield, right. I think our intent was to use a lot of the work that's been done in the AKRF work also. That's typically what we would do when we start a project, is just read, just absorb as much as we can. In the AKRF document, they already have kind of a summary report. We're gonna have to go back and look at all of those documents anyhow. I think it's one thing to read a 2-paragraph summary and another thing to read the whole report, but at least it gives us kind of I would say a compass on where to go for certain things. I think that will be an important report that we'll look at. The pattern book, the DRI, there's so much work that has been done in the town
Right,
that we're
that's-
really gonna have to kind of go through. We're not experts on it just yet. We know those materials are there. We've kind of looked through it. But
Again, we went
yeah.
through the DRI material yesterday. The people who helped Dawn, I think, do that, Perkins Eastman. We've got all of their work too, because we share space with them. We're affiliated. And the man who headed up that project, Eric Fangs,
Yes, he's
Sure.
great, and
Yeah.
There was quite a bit of community engagement
yeah.
Yeah.
yeah,
in
he's
that. I
really
mean, I participated,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
it was a 4-month process.
Yeah,
Yes.
again,
Actually, they collapsed a 6-month process
Yeah.
Into a
into
4-month.
4 months.
Sounds
So we
like-
were faced with that day and night, but
Yeah.
we reached out to the entire community.
yeah.
Yeah, and I think that those recommendations would certainly carry over.
And so is he willing, Frank, to share
Yes,
the information with you?
Yeah,
Because I know
just
some
so
of
you
it is
know.
online, but
yeah. Just so you know, within our,
that's great. So that's less
Space.
costly for
we
us.
share space with Perkins Eastman Architects in New York, and also our our Women Business Enterprise Urbanomics is kind of woven into us. They're in our proposal. So our proposal basically, I think, is we're interested in taking in what's been done. We think some of it, the transportation work, for instance, is good work, the DRI work. Also, the UDA, the Urban Design Associates out of Pittsburgh, the UDA study on the pattern book, and also the idea of the square downtown. We think that's good work.
I think
And,
so too, yeah.
if we
was.
don't-
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're gonna,
That's gonna
our
happen.
sense is, let's incorporate things that you've done that are good, and let's have
Go
us
on.
focus on the issues that you have, and I know you have some
They're
issues.
talking about all the work that you've done with downtown and the UDA to incorporate it. Can you just expand how much work you may have, how much work you have that has been completed?
Yeah, and I think,
You have to speak louder,
I
'cause-
think at our last meeting, you all kind of acknowledged and discussed that, we talked about the
Yeah.
DRI, so I was happy to hear that you had done that research, and I think we have a large body of work on downtown. I mean, I
Yeah.
think that's gonna be the least amount of work that you have to do, other than knitting it into whatever else we're doing. I think the secret idea is brilliant, honestly, and
You have the parking study?
we have the parking study, we have a market study, we have a pattern book,
The
we have
McLean.
a TOD overlay study, we're in the middle of completing an activation study with UDA for downtown. That was subsequent to our town square design study, so we're, literally, we've been
Yeah.
on it with
That's great.
downtown.
Yeah, so I think our approach as a comprehensive plan would really be to bring together all of those things that have already been done. Some things, maybe it's, if it was done 5 or 6 years ago, maybe there might be some tweaks which we'll have an opportunity working with you and the community and other stakeholders to kind of tweak, but, really bring that into one document and then focus on those areas that might need some attention, such as Calverton, Route 58, agricultural areas, TDR.
That's what I wanted to ask about. I think Jeff told me, or somebody told me that you had some specialty background in
Yeah, so
TDRs.
TDR, yeah, oh yeah,
Yeah.
right, because we talked about last time the kind of handbook that BFJ worked on or completed for NYSERDA. And so we have some alternative approaches that we can explore. The alternative that AKRF looked at also had some recommendations, which we'd like to review and just to see, but certainly there are innovative ways to look at sending and receiving that are maybe a little bit different than what is in the
That's
code right
great.
now.
It's one of the things that, everybody in this town loves, is the fact that we still have a vibrant agricultural community and
Right.
how to balance that with development.
Right.
And I think we've been trying to work on it for many years.
Right.
But to have some alternative ideas really could be helpful. And
Yeah.
we really need to get this off the ground.
I think one of the ideas that I was discussing with George Achmart, who worked on that, was that, some of the, thinking about it less as kind of a unit, one unit of agricultural land transferring over to 1 or 2 units, thinking about it more as far as like trip generation and thinking about other ways to kind of make the impacts equate in some way. So yeah, these are things that we will
Great.
explore.
So
We do have a long experience with TDR, starting with the transfer of development rights.
Yeah, they
from
have their own
grant.
website, and they also have a TDR manual.
Okay, so I have just a couple of questions, and maybe this is to Jeff, but the work that McLean did, the balance is 136,000. In the last group that was here, would that be in addition to what they submitted to us? And I would imagine that that's $136,000 on top of your 299, okay. That's
Not
number one.
Not that we're charging you.
No, I
Yeah,
understand, no,
okay.
I'm just, the
Yeah.
aggregate, right?
Yeah.
So, the second question I have is, did you also ask BFJ about an energy component?
Yes.
You did, and I don't see it, what was your cost on that? I didn't see that.
Yeah,
I
I
must
think
have
that
missed
we
it.
have a chapter, it's,
Sustainability and
my
resilience.
eyesight here. It's
Task
the last one, task,
10.
yeah, and we've got a
Which one is it?
sustainability and resilience, task
Okay,
3.10.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Sustainability and resilience,
Okay.
it would be in there.
Understood. The next one is, that you guys have, I mean, you're working in these towns like New Rochelle, right, or Westchester. You have experience with battery storage.
Yes, I'm currently working up in the planner in a small village in Westchester County called the Village of Briarcliff Manor. And
I know it.
the village board recently, with our help, amended their zoning or their code to address the battery
They
energy
understand the
storage
need
the
for
best.
battery
Yeah,
storage.
and they're
Okay.
regulating that through special permits.
Okay.
I
one
went to
other-
PU and I lived in
Oh,
Briarcliff
Oh, you
Manor
did?
for 2 years.
Wow.
So,
PU!
one other question. Have you worked with agrivoltaics at all, as opposed to?
Yeah, we just did this is a northern Dutchess County town. We've just done their solar ordinance, but the big issue there, northeast
I'm
Dutchess
familiar with it a
County,
little bit, yeah.
very rural, dairy country, also heavy agriculture. And we varied from this model state law slightly because we wanted to make sure that agricultural land remained preserved. So there's that issue of preservation versus solar and finding that balance. So that's one
So-
place where we've dealt with this a little.
All right, so you put agrivoltaics on that, on development rights sold land? I'm misunderstanding.
There, under the state model, it's a sort of a tier 3. We've type of solar, so it's a more major solar, and we've limited that application in Pine Plains to.
Okay, so
yeah.
did you use agrivoltaics on that property? You know what that is, so.
Oh, it
Yeah,
was just
yeah, yeah.
zoning.
Yeah.
This was just zoning.
Yeah, this was
Oh,
zoning.
just
we were doing.
zoning,
Yeah.
okay.
But it was more prohibitive from if I'm interpreting, they didn't want to see
Yeah, this
solar
is-
above.
So they weren't interested in dual use of land? Okay, okay, thanks. That's pretty backwards.
I have a list of things that I mentioned to the other group that are kind of hot topics that certainly need to be addressed. And first and foremost, it's the industrial zoned areas, industrial A, B, and C, especially in the Calverton area, where most of it is. Our doors have been knocked off between solar farms and now battery storage and an anaerobic digester, warehousing, logistic warehousing. So we need to look at that because from, really, top of the list for me, because 2003, when things were zoned differently and with the comp plan, and sometimes these zones had been there long before that, things have changed. It's become not just a rural area, but rural residential. And, people bought out here thinking they were gonna have this beautiful view. Maybe should have done their homework a little better and realized that they bought next to industrial property. But what we have now is we have beautiful homes in an area, they pay a lot of taxes, and they don't wanna see a 60-foot warehouse in their backyard. You can't blame them. So we need to address that first and foremost. The TDRs, as we discussed, that's very high on the list. The downtown, the majority of the work is done, but we need to bring it all together and tie it all up. I mentioned the anaerobic digesters, solar farms, battery storage facilities, and also the cumulative effect of all of that, of each one. I'm not saying, okay, we can have one here, we can have one there, but look at what it does to the entire area, to the entire town as a whole. The warehouses and the logistics centers, Apartment saturation, we have a lot of apartments downtown. Years ago it was determined that there should be 500 apartments townwide. Well, we've got that in DC1 practically now. We're coming in the future. So we want to know what the saturation rate is for that. Frank had mentioned, I'm just going to steal his thunder a little bit, the school district, obviously, how this all implies in, or fits into the school district,
Right.
which is already packed at the seams.
Right.
So we need to look at that strong and hard. And there's, as you know, there's many other facets to it, but these were things that are, to me, are first and foremost. And, it's very important that that gets done rather quickly.
Yeah, I mean, all those are, I think, important issues that we would really focus in on, and we'd kind of look to you to kind of think about what are those targeted areas that we want to spend more of our time on, because a lot of work has been done, and so let's figure out, those targeted areas. I mean, it's too early to, say how those areas should be approached, but just that, we do have experience with industrial and warehouse spaces. We're doing the master plan for Edison, New Jersey right now. And Edison is kind of at the, there's the Turnpike, the Garden State Parkway, 87, and Amazon, has located there. And it's become a major nuisance because it's not the typical warehouse that might operate between normal business hours. They're running all day. And trucks coming in and out of the community have become a major issue.
Absolutely. And our roads weren't built for truck traffic.
The
like
roads
that.
were not
These
built
are-
for that, it's a post-World War II, community, and so that's one of the big issues, and trying to think about what other types of uses might be appropriate, and they're thinking about data centers and other types of uses that might be appropriate. But it's similar issues, and they're all located right next to residential areas, and so you have those kind of conflict of uses. I don't know, as far as the, apartments and housing, we'll look at that. Also, there was a trends analysis done by AKRF that was fairly extensive, so we'll look at that as a starting point, work with Urbanomics to kind of get into housing a little bit more. There have been a lot of studies on affordable housing on the East End, so we'll want to kind of check in about that.
Stony Brook completed a study a couple of years ago.
We have the Stony Brook study.
Yes, and that's critical because the Riverhead is mentioned in there, and they did determine that we had our share of
Yeah.
affordable housing.
Yeah.
Yes.
And it was a well completed study, and I'm glad that you are aware and that you're going to be utilizing it.
Under your phase 5 for the add-on tasks, do you envision anything off the top of your head that you would want to include or put in that now?
Well, we didn't include the specific writing of zoning changes because it's very hard to, write a scope and a budget for that when we really don't know what is going to, occur. There could be anything from just small text amendments to, who knows, a form-based code or something, that's really substantial that requires a tremendous amount of work, and then perhaps additional environmental review. So we didn't want
Or
to.
other code, if you wanted changes to your subdivision regulations or
Yeah,
some
yeah,
other
Well, that's what I'm
code.
getting at. H2M provided two other, one for an energy plan of $25,000 and $30,000 for code amendments.
We could certainly provide an example, provide an estimate. It's just very difficult for us to do that without knowing what it is. I mean, just think about, any work product, if someone said, I want you to give me a quote for this thing that is just a big, it's a box when you don't know what's in the box. It's really hard to know.
That goes hand in hand with my idea going forward is that the plan is going to take a year getting through the plan and the GIS process. That takes us into the 2024 budget, so that I would anticipate that by the end of, a year from now, when you're going through your budget for 2024, we'll have a vision as to what laws are going to be needed, and then we'll incorporate that into the 2024 budget.
Also, sometimes town council and planners can do it on their own depending on the level, so we might not need our services.
I understand, you don't know if you have to change
But if
code,
we're tightening code versus
5
drafting new
codes,
code,
100 codes,
Yeah, how do you know?
depending on how
maybe
large
it's tightening up
and the
industrial
impact
versus
that this
drafting
code
new
is going to have.
Right.
Yeah, that's right, and I think
Yeah.
what we,
design guidelines or whatever.
what we just did in Southampton may be something of a model. We like to do it in a lot of plans. As much as we can telegraph in the plan, for instance, the 5 items you just listed, and there's others, I'm sure. As much as we can telegraph those that have a zoning impact in the plan, now you've got the public hearing on the plan, you get a sense of those. And in Southampton, the day after they adopted it, I got a call from, one of the trustees who's chair of our committee and said, okay, the first one that you recommended is recommended in the plan as an overlay district, an arts and culture overlay district. Start on it. We're gonna do that first, and they're gonna do iteratively, go through the recommendations and develop them. But they will be developed with legal counsel. And the actual law, of course, will be created by your town council
And I
But
think
that's
that's,
something you may not wanna do.
that's a really critical part to all this. If, say, 6 months from now, we all agree on a proposed code change, I don't think we wanna wait until another 6 months to a year to bring it forward. I think we can start analyzing and drafting the code, at that time, and start analyzing it.
Yeah, that was my
Well,
next.
codes are a constant moving target. I mean, with everything changing with technology and different requests, and, we're often going through code revision and saying, we
Right,
need
there's different,
changes.
there's
Now
always
look
new
what-
uses.
And there are some code revisions that are not, pick up on what Jeff said. In Ossining, New York, what the attorney helped us with, a very good sort of local land use attorney, said, look, there are some changes to the zoning that have land use implications, and they should be anticipated by your comprehensive plan. But there's many code changes that have nothing to do with the comprehensive plan, and you can move forward with them, the definition of something. How the planning board, procedures for the planning board, has nothing to do with the comprehensive plan. You can move forward with those. But if there's a big change to your industrial area, we need to anticipate that.
And by my comments did not intend or need to intimate that we're going to segment secret, not at all. So I don't want that being perceived.
I have a question. So we sit on the cusp of a 99-year lease selling EPCAL and getting $40 million for it. So if we were to receive those funds potentially within 3 to 6 months, and our comprehensive plan is a year out, how do we address the potential development, or how do we make decisions on what to lease at EPCAL to make sure that we're best suiting the town and its vision going forward?
Is it, it's zoned, just industrial, it's not,
Economic development, right?
is it like a planned development district, or how is it?
The core of it is right now, but the rest is industrial. Yeah, you're right, we have 90 acres of recreational.
I mean, if you,
Light industrial.
I feel like you'd want it to be in some kind of, like a planned, a master plan district.
So do we take a priority in that particular area of the town and we focus on, but obviously
Well-
you're not gonna get a full comprehensive till you know everything in town, but
Yeah,
I'm
but
just
we could
curious of how
certainly
you address
focus
something of
on
that
that
magnitude.
earlier than not. And, you have a couple of choices. I don't know the exact, on your question on that, do you need to know when that sale occurs, what your zoning is gonna be? In other words, you need to know 3 months out from now, or can it wait?
I don't think it would be fair to mislead a buyer.
Right.
Some of the
You'd
leases,
probably
what
wanna
they can or
change the
can't do with
zoning
property.
before you sell it, is my sense. I don't know, correct me if I'm wrong, but, as the,
We're in contract, so
Or
we
at
can't
least-
change zoning on the contract.
Yeah,
That's
right.
not gonna
Right.
work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We'll lose that one in court. I
Right.
don't think he'll make it past intake on that, in that regard. But the councilman brought an interesting question.
I mean, you could
How
call it
does
out.
looking at the build-out, I'm assuming you're looking at the build-out. However, within the last amendment, before it went to the IDA, any costs related to the property, they have to incur. And that would be, I think, a separate,
But you could do a separate design
right, but
charrette for the
I think the
property and have a.
CDA, who's charged with that property, Dawn, did you want to add to this?
But
I think that, they have sort of a plan that they've submitted, and they're in the middle, they're gonna be shortly in the middle of an environmental impact study. So, so I think there's an easy way to sort of dovetail what you're needing to do, what you're looking to get done there, and making sure that the things that you see as important are incorporated. It was, that planning study
picking up on what Dawn said,
She's
that's
got a
very
fear of
important to know,
microphones.
because if the applicant
a
in
fear
this
of
case is doing their own EIS, that's good, because then you're able
More
to.
information for you to have.
That's right, and for
And
you.
that's costly to us.
Yeah.
However, what happens up there has a great effect on
Yeah.
the surrounding communities and the
Right.
whole potentially western side of the
Uh,
town. And
you-
so how the
You-
areas that are not controlled and operated by them develop.
Right.
You may want to separately, and I'm not looking at our services here, although maybe I am, look to hire your own environmental review consultant to manage and review their work on your behalf, so that they're submitting, this is very common, that this is what we did in New Rochelle with that document, we do this all over, where we're reviewing on behalf of a town or a village, a private development, because they're submitting an environmental document to you. You don't have the technical expertise to know if what they're saying is correct or accurate or the appropriate methodologies. So you may want to separately, and typically those are paid through escrow accounts from the developer, so it's not costing you any money, is have someone that's representing you in that environmental review process, so that there's a check on their work.
Makes perfect sense.
And then making sure that they're including alternatives that you're comfortable with, and making sure their scoping process, you're on board with that, and that all of these issues that you may have about surrounding and cumulative impacts are being addressed.
That's the key, the alternatives. In other words, you can put into that, you're the agency, you're the approvals agency. They'll know that, whoever's doing that EIS, I don't know who's doing it, but if you review it and you want to be there in scoping, so that you get the right alternatives in that you would like to see examined. By the time all work's done, we'll be ready on the comp plan. We can incorporate in the
Just think
preferred
we could find
alternative.
ourselves in a difficult situation where you can have a development project that could be 6 months, 9 months out, and a comprehensive plan that's not done.
That's unfortunately, I feel like I'm running into this. We have a very similar situation when we're doing the White Plains Comprehensive Plan. There's a big development downtown that may be ahead of us, and we're trying to figure out just that issue is coordinating, because we also want the developer to pay to do that work, and so that you're not paying, or the city or whoever isn't paying for that work. And then how do you incorporate that? We had a bit of a model in New Rochelle where there was the private development, and they were doing their own EIS separate from the comp plan. They were ahead of us. To make it so that it sort of seamlessly fit into the comp plan, there was a lot of public outreach. We required a lot of public outreach on behalf of that private applicant. It was a public-private partnership, which this is a little bit too, if you're selling them the property, that there was outreach so that there was community buy-in, and then ultimately those recommendations for the downtown, in that case zoning, went right into the comprehensive plan.
And I think when we do it, the plan, and when we have our public outreach, we kind of want to make clear that these are like, related but separate projects, because one could take over the room, could become the elephant in the room. We don't want the whole comprehensive plan process to be kind of just really just become about this particular project.
That's good news, and it may work. Where are they in have they started the EIS?
No, it's before the IDA. We
Right,
haven't even
you haven't
closed,
even-
and they're not
yeah.
gonna bill for another 2 years possibly, and they need all the approvals, all the
It's in
studies.
Riverhead Local.
Okay.
Yeah, look in Riverhead Local.
There's a lot of environmental work on that property already.
Okay.
We worked on subdivision, there's a EIS, there's kind of comprehensive.
Okay.
So-
Habitat
90-day
management
approval
plan,
process.
Their
Has
approval,
to go through the state.
they're 3 years for putting a shovel in the ground.
work out nice.
We haven't even closed.
I would just want you guys to understand what their vision is.
Yes.
And how
Yes.
it's incorporated into the plan.
Absolutely.
Because if you don't know what's going on up there, then the whole
No, that's-
comprehensive
Yeah.
plan doesn't
It
work.
has to address it, and
I did share the link for the local press about the article about EIDA and Cat 5 with both planning consultants, so they were aware of where we are right now.
Okay,
and
so
the
you are
vision.
aware, good. All right,
Thank you, Jim.
good point. Anyone else? All right, thank you for coming.
Yeah.
Good
Thank you.
job. And hopefully we're gonna decide, Tim, I think we should sit together and discuss everybody.
Sooner than later.
Yeah, possibly by next week. We should
Yeah.
have an answer.
That'd be great.
Okay, and thank you, have a good day.
Okay,
and
thank you all.
tomorrow's
Thanks so
Friday,
much.
So
Thanks.
enjoy your weekend.
Okay.
Thank
Take
you
care.
for coming in.
thank you.
and again, thank you, everyone. This concludes our discussion items for today. And Devin, can you please come forward and read the resolutions? Ready, guys? Yes.
Your mic's not on, Devin. Larry?
Is that better?
You good?
Yeah.
Okay. Resolution number 1 appoints a homemaker. Resolution number 2, 1716 Route 58 LLC, Riverhead Dodge, capital project number 82221, budget adoption. Number 3, order establishing lateral water main extension replacement at 205 Osborne Avenue, Riverhead, New York. Number 4, order establishing water main extension for Norfolk Developers LLC. Number 5, accepts the resignation of an automotive equipment operator. Number 6, adopts a local law amending Chapter 263 of the Riverhead Town Code entitled Rental Dwelling Units, Section 8 thereof entitled Riverhead of Application, Inspections, and Issuance of Permit. Number 7, approves additional sick leave, nunc-pro-tunc. Number 8, ambulance district budget transfer. Number 9, Riverhead Sewer District and Scavenger Waste District budget transfers. Number 10, authorizes town clerk to publish and post notice to consider a local law to amend Chapter 101, Open Meetings Law. Number 11, a resolution authorizing the Riverhead Community Development Agency, CDA, to retain Smith, Finkelstein, Lundberg, Eisler, and Yakubowski LLC as special counsel for the CDA with respect to CDA's joint application with Calverton Aviation and Technology LLC, CAT, to the Town of Riverhead Industrial Development Agency, IDA, to transfer title to all the acreage CDA owns as the Enterprise Park at Calverton, EPCAL, in order to facilitate the sale and transfer of approximately 1,643 acres at EPCAL, Calverton Aviation and Technology LLC, CAT, pursuant to the terms of the agreement of sale between the CDA and the CAT dated November 19, 2018, agreement except as amended and agreed to as set forth and reflected by the terms of Town Board Resolution Number 2.
Dawn here?
We can
Yeah,
get
would you
Dawn.
mind, please?
And CDA Resolution Number 4, adopted on March 24, 2022, and letter agreement between the CDA, Town, and CAT agreement between CDA and IDA for transfer of the remaining property.
I have a question for Dawn on this.
Okay? Should we keep going, come back until Dawn comes in?
Yes, absolutely.
Number 12, authorizes town clerk to publish and post notice to consider a local law to amend Chapter 217, Article 7 of the Riverhead Town Code entitled Front Yard Restrictions and Driveways. Number 13, Water District Budget Transfer.
Okay. Dawn, regarding the resolution before us, number 11, the one you put in authorizing Riverhead CDA to retain the law firm.
That's for,
I have a question on it.
okay.
Yes.
Okay, so my question is, when we amended the contract, the FCAL contract, we included that all legal funds were going to be paid by the prospective buyer.
Yes.
Which is CAT, and I want to ensure that this is not coming out of town funds.
No, not coming out of town funds.
Perfect. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Can I just ask one question on, just in terms of the verbiage on this? I know the overall intention is the sale, but isn't it written up as a lease first with the potential upon subdivision, it transfers into a sale?
So this came out of the town attorney's office, so I haven't gotten tight with this yet. Hang on one second. CDA resolution.
This is about transferring the title over, and I'm just thinking right now.
Well, we are transferring the title over to the IDA.
That's what we agreed to. Send it to the IDA.
Ultimately, the CDA would be transferring title to the IDA, who would then lease back to both CAT and to the town.
this says, the sale and transfer of approximately
Correct.
1,600 acres of EPCAL to Calverton Aviation. Equals enterprise property account to facilitate the sale and transfer. But it's just, I
It's
don't know, I
right,
think it
and
should be more of a lease agreement.
It refers to the amendment of the agreement from March, which is the joint lease,
Application.
joint application to the IDA, then lease back. Yeah, I think you're concerned that it refers to the transfer of the land.
That it's immediate sale, and it's really not sale, it's really a lease
Well,
component
it's
of
an
99 years
immediate-
until
it's
we
an-
get the subdivision,
It's
right?
an
Then it
immediate
becomes a sale.
transfer to the IDA, and then a lease back.
It just says in order to facilitate the sale and transfer.
Right.
So this whole structure that we put together.
Eric, get in front of the mic.
This whole structure that we put together with the CDA and the IDA and CAT was designed to facilitate the transfer, and so that's what this says.
So it's
Yeah, I mean, you,
more of a preparation long-term, you say?
well, it's sort of the overall intention of it, right?
Okay.
We're just talking about the title of the resolution, not anything substantive in the resolution itself, right?
Correct.
All right.
Good.
Okay.
Transfer all title in order to facilitate, yeah. I mean, I think it's accurate the way that it's worded.
Okay.
Okay, so I think we're up to resolution number 13, Water District Budget Transfer. Number 14, Tag Building HVAC Project Budget Adjustment. Number 15, appoints a water treatment plant operator trainee. Number 16, authorizes town clerk to publish and post bid for ultra-low sulfur diesel fuel. Number 17, determination and declaration that the property known as 330 Baywood Drive, Calverton, New York, 11901, Suffolk County Tax Map Number 600-40-6-1, is blighted and assessing costs against the subject property. Number 18, authorizes the filing of an application for New York State assistance from the Municipal Waste Reduction and Recycling Program and signing of the associated state contract under the appropriate laws of New York State. Number 19, designates the second Friday of October as PFC Garfield M. Langhorne Day within the town of Riverhead. Number 20, authorization to enter into an agreement with joint venture entity between RXR and Georgia Green, GGV, to retain certified environmental professional for the Town of Riverhead Transportation Overlay District, TOD project. And 21, accepts resignation of and appoints member to the Town of Riverhead Industrial Development Agency.
Great.
I know, I appreciate we have an executive session discussing about the ice rink, but I imagine if we can come to an agreement today, perhaps, it could be added as a resolution to the October 4th meeting, if everyone's in agreement.
We should discuss that in executive session because yesterday I received almost a final draft. I haven't been able to review it and I'm the one that has to sign off on it. And we are gonna discuss it, so pushing a resolution, and I didn't even have the updated appendix on there. So, again, I got it yesterday afternoon and to put up a resolution, let's just talk about it in executive session. And then
I
we can
understand that, but I'm
possibly
thinking
go
if
that
we come
way.
to agreement today, or if at least we
Well,
have
let's
four
talk-
that agree, or three that it would move, I just wanna make sure that
Yeah.
we're meeting the timeline.
But I
to
don't
make
want a
sure that goes
NEPCAP
into it.
contract that, and I'm signing off on it, so I do have a couple of things that I want to share. I haven't had a chance, again, I got it late afternoon and told to turn it around, and that was not possible yesterday. So let's just talk about it, we're gonna move it, we want this to happen.
Just to clarify, the draft that was sent yesterday to everyone just includes the changes that I had previously marked in my prior draft in handwriting. And then, includes a couple other changes that I discussed individually with some.
Right, but I haven't given it a comprehensive review, because last week, you told us on Sunday, Sunday night to have any recommendation by Monday, that was impossible, I wasn't around. And so it seems, I need a little time, but we'll discuss, we want this to happen. But again, I'm not gonna create an EPCAP contract, and,
It's 2 weeks ago.
yeah, 2 weeks ago. Yeah, and I'm also in budget mode and lockdown, so,
I understand,
we
but
know we
wanna
want
move
this.
it. We,
But the public should also be aware and have, initially they want 10 acres of land, as we discussed it, and that, we have to come and
Yeah,
and
this has been
disagree.
revised, so I suggest we just take it into executive session.
Yeah,
'cause
this is
if-
take it into
and-
executive
and
session.
We can, to Ken's point, in order to really get this thing done, right, if everybody
Mm-hmm.
is fine, we can just vote on it.
my
Well,
question was,
It should go to the public before we go up with a resolution.
my que-
We'll bring it to work session.
It would be an attachment to any resolution that
Okay.
would be subject to.
Okay, let's just discuss that in executive session. Okay,
the question was, if 3 members are in agreement today to move this forward, we should be able to put it on as a resolution for the October 4th meeting.
That would be consistent with the town board rules.
Thank you. That's
it
what
would
I-
also be consistent, but it's also consistent with the supervisor's office to move something forward when she's not prepared. So,
But you have to
but-
let your fellow councilman govern.
oh, yes, oh, absolutely, and we want this to happen. I just need some time to look at it and for us to discuss it together. Okay, so we'll discuss it in executive session. And again, thank you, Devin. This concludes the open session portion of the work session today. And in a moment, I'm gonna ask for a first and a second to enter into executive session to discuss the following. Can I have a first and a second to enter into executive session, please?
Motion.
Great. Okay, all in favor? All opposed? So moved. Everyone, please stay safe.